Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office return to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Nicole Finari.
And I'm Garrett Eberhard.
And what movie are we overanalyzing this week?
This week we are overanalyzing The Photograph.
So written and directed by Stella Meggy, The Photograph follows the estranged daughter, played by Issa Rae, of a famous photographer who falls in love with the journalist Lakeith Stanfield, assigned to cover her late mother. Chelsea Peretti, Lil Ray Howery, and Courtney B. Vance. So, what did you think of The Photograph?
I really liked it. I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was well made, considering there were sort of dual plot lines that jumped back and forth between different time periods. So I thought the director's ability to mesh those together and have them be both their own separate stories, but be intertwined, because he was telling one story, he was sort of telling the backstory to one of the main characters. I thought was pulled off well.
I hated it. I knew you were going to like it. I knew this was going to be controversial. And I not only hated it, I angry hate it. I want those 2 hours and that $15 back. I'm genuinely angry somebody made me watch this movie, somebody being me, because I'm the one who ultimately picks the movie for the podcast. But I thought it was awful.
In terms of...
So I'll go through it, but one of the interesting things is, so I looked at Rotten Tomatoes. I always like to sort of get a sense of what the critic reviews are. And most of them are positive, but there are a few negative reviews. And then I looked on Twitter, and people definitely had very mixed feelings about it. So where do we even begin on how much I dislike this movie? I will say that No, I really liked nothing about this movie. Everyone was like, "Oh, it was really moody and dark." I'm like, it was really dark, and that was just annoying. I didn't appreciate the dark cinematography and the dark lighting. I was like, "You turn the lights? Why?" I don't like when. I was like, I thought we were over this phase. This seems very regressive to have this dark a movie. I
wouldn't say dark. I would say sultry.
No, it was literally dark. The lighting was dark. Almost all the action takes place at night. Mm-hmm. It is intentional. The director talks about why she chose to do such low lighting.
Well, I saw an article that just talked about the complexities behind lighting dark skin. It's been talked about in film more and more, following Moonlight, which did it so well. Mm-hmm. So I saw some people say that they thought it was well lit, the darker skin.
Yeah, I think, like I said, she was definitely trying to do something. It was very intentional to make it sort of moody and atmospheric. And sort of highlighting, while not making it so dark you can't actually see the black people in the movie. I get it. I just didn't appreciate the aesthetic. I appreciated nothing about the aesthetic. I hated... All right, let's start with Issa Rae. I don't know if she's not a good actress or this wasn't well directed. But and this isn't her fault because it wasn't on the page, her character has zero personality. None whatsoever. She's completely plastic. She's extremely wealthy. She has, people call Nancy Meyers out for her interiors. The interiors in this movie were ridiculous.
Okay.
No 20-year-old would have that apartment and a crystal decanter and have whiskey and bitters on hand. It was so over the top.
Was she 20?
They were in their 20s, yeah.
Okay.
So divorced from reality. I was like, what is, this is so dumb. And that just makes her so, unrelatable and also confusing. And so we're gonna get into some adult topics here. Cause before I tackle him, I want to talk about one of the quote unquote pivotal moments of this movie, which is they're very slow, not very exciting sex scene. What did you make of her face, if you can remember, after they had sex? Because they're kind of lying next to each other in bed. She's looking up at him.
Nothing stood out at me because nothing stood out because I can't remember. It's barely registering. I remember the silhouettes of them, the moonlight was shining in. It was a dark room, which was fine. But her face, I don't know. Did she look
She looked anxious.
Okay.
She's kind of like looking up at him with like this sort of worried, anxious look on her face. I have no idea what they were going for, but my read of her face was her kind of looking at him like, is it my turn now? Like, I was like, that is not the face of a woman who had an orgasm. Like, she does not look like blissed out, relaxed, anything. She looks very tense and anxious, as she sort of does for the entire movie.
Is that not part of the characterization? Because it's a story of generational problems with love.
So she's going to go all the way to England for a guy who can't make her come?
Well, that... Are you projecting onto, like, the not make her come thing? Because my thing was, okay, if she looked anxious, and you said she looked anxious throughout the movie. This is a movie about a woman who has a problem connecting with men in terms of her love life. And it's a generational trauma that she's inherited from her mother. And so her being nervous for the first time, having sex with somebody that she really liked. And since she really likes him, she's getting to the point where normally she would cut it off with a man. And so is that part of what the anxiety is? I just had sex with you, it was enjoyable, we're having a good moment,
that was enjoyable face. I think I am projecting, but my point is, I don't know what the heck they were going for in that scene, but it was bad. And I don't know if it is because Issa Rae really should just stick to comedy, or the director, or what. But it was just like, wow, that is like the least afterglow look I've ever seen in my life.
Is this something that you look for in every movie? Like, and what is a good post-orgasm face in a movie that you've seen?
I mean, light up a cigarette, something, people. It was just really noticeable because it was a very long, lingering shot on her face, and she was like kind of half biting her lip, and I'm like, I don't know what you're trying to telegraph. I'm sure I'm reading this wrong, but this is how it reads.
A lip bite is never a bad sign.
An anxious, worried lip bite is not. So...
Okay.
Step one, she has no personality. She's completely plastic. Personally, one of my fave moments of this movie is when he shows up in New Orleans and he makes a comment. I was like, it's nice to see her look casual. Mm-hmm. I'm like, y'all, her hair is ironed and she's a full face of freaking makeup on. That's not casual. Like, it was such a ridiculously stupid thing to say, and it was like an insult to women, and particularly to black women everywhere. Just like, she's wearing a maxi dress. That doesn't make her...
I guess so. I took it more as he was commenting on her being dressed down and not as bougie, buppy as she was in New York. The makeup thing, I guess that's a good point.
Yeah, she looked bougie as hell. I'm sorry. A maxi dress does not change any of that.
Yeah, they could have made her down a little bit. That's
I mean,
in terms of makeup.
Actually, somebody was like, someone pointed out, like, how in the heck is this girl in Louisiana? And, like, she never sweats and her hair never gets curly. Like, I'm like, yeah, that's a little...
So this sounds like...
unrealistic.
This sounds like a problem where when you don't like a movie, you start to notice all the things that, like, are wrong with it. Everything starts to annoy you. I mean, like when you're encountering someone who just annoys you and like, oh, I hate the way you look. Because... So
you're saying you don't feel that this is a legitimate criticism?
No, I mean, like...
Who cares?
Now we're like, okay, she's in New Orleans and she's not sweating or anything. Like, is that really something that regularly happens in films? Like, now it just seems like it's annoying you. So, like, you're noticing
that
every
was not
thing.
my comment. That was somebody else's. So that, like, sort of tackles her issues. And like I said, I don't blame Issa Rae. Like, there wasn't a lot on the page for her to work with. Like, she was not given a personality. What is unfortunate is, like, an exceptional actress would have brought stuff to the role regardless. That's not on her. Because that's what really, truly good acting can do. So they elevate poor material, right?
There was no personality for you in the first date conversation when they were in the booth?
Drake versus Kendrick?
Yeah.
I got nothing. I thought that was such an artificially stupid conversation.
That felt like a natural conversation.
It didn't feel that way to me. But I'm not black. And I can't take Degrassi Junior High seriously, and I really don't like Kendrick Lamar, so, fair enough. Out of my wheelhouse. And that is literally like the only conversation that they have. And so another one of my critiques of this movie is everybody's love story is literally based on long, lingering looks. There's a lot of sultry looks, but there's not a whole lot to really express why these two people like each other.
Connected.
So that's her. Let's tackle him. So if you could recount to our listeners, one, their whole relationship moves at the most red flag aggressive speed that I've ever seen in my entire life. He literally like doesn't wait for the first date to be over before he kisses her. Their second date is him spending the night and then her meeting his family.
I thought about that,
and I was like, girl, run. Like, that's that's a
so,
lot.
As far as his moving fastly, that was a
in character
plot point. Yeah, it was in character. Like his brother, this was something that he was consistently being chastised for his brother. You do this with that girl.
Right.
You get connected quickly. So, I mean, for him to be displaying that, it's part of his character. Like
right.
part of the characterization.
But do you understand that then that being part of his character, which his brother consistently criticizes him for because it makes his relationships not work out?
Mm-hmm.
So this time it's...
I mean, people get caught into...
Totally different, we're supposed to think.
So
watching someone replay out their dysfunction is usually...
Is that
antithesis of a romantic comedy or drama. It's usually that they've matured and grown. They see somebody they never would have given a chance. Like, they work through their personal stuff. They don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again. So that was just really a weird...
But shouldn't that be a point in this movie's favor, showing something realistic? Because, I mean, realistically, most people do fall into the same...
Oh, I mean, realistically, they're not going to work out because they're... Well, so... I mean... This is the worst. And like how you manage to suck almost all the charm out of Lakeith Stanfield is it's a real talent, people. It's a real talent. So they end up at his brother and sister-in-law's place. And one of the things I feel like that makes this movie so frustrating in terms of the main love story is how well Lil Ray Howery and the woman who played his wife did. And their connection and their banter and laughter was more realistic as a love moment than any moment any other person like had in this movie. And it was like, this is what real chemistry looks like.
That makes...
Not talking and just looking at each other.
That makes logistical sense though, because they're a married couple that have been together for at least 8 years? Would you say that's how old their oldest was?
Yeah, but like, I'm sorry, but when you meet somebody that you really connect with, like, it's like you can't wait to tell them every story about yourself. Like, you just talk nonstop. You don't just stand there and look at each other all the time.
I don't think it wasn't a lot of like just standing there and looking at each other to me. Like, they had some conversations. They may have been as substantive as you wanted them to be, but I mean... They
didn't need to be substantive. They had their only conversations are like him hitting on her or that one about music.
Mm-hmm. And they talk about each other's pasts.
She grills him about her former relationships.
Yeah.
That's hot. Okay, but my point is, they end up at his brother and sister-in-law's house. At which point you get one of those, like, now we're going to tell a cute story about, our little brother. Mm-hmm. So you can, like, be like, aw, how adorable. What is his signature story that gets told?
Let's see if I remember. You're going to have to jog my memory. His
signature story is him disappearing at his own brother's wedding and therefore failing to give the best man toast. So they have to rope somebody else in to do it. And he kind of goes, well, I had stage fright, and shrugs. He is not even apologetic about it after the fact, much less during. And I'm sitting there like, that's your story about him? Like, girl, run! Why? Who does that? What a freaking terrible person!
It spoke to his inconsistency in terms of what we're seeing from him in a relationship and how he runs as a character. I mean, that's why it was there.
Who would want to date somebody whose brother just told them that story?
A lot of people would.
No one would.
Yeah.
Like, that's not cute. It's not sexy. It's not adorable. There is nothing good about that story. He just ends up looking like a terrible person.
Terrible people get dates all the time.
Yeah, I don't think that's what they were trying to go. I mean, I don't know why they included that. It was bizarre land.
Oh, because the characterization speaks to his personality.
Of being a freaking terrible person that no one should date.
Terrible people
Which she
get dates
follows
all
up
the time.
this whole act with then not returning her phone calls, which he is somehow magically forgiven for instantaneously and has never really addressed. Like, he sucks.
That doesn't take me out of the movie.
He, like, hardcore it sucks. So, like, as a woman watching this movie, I'm just like, part of me is like, you have no personality, so maybe this is the best you can do. But the other part of me is like, why would, like, I couldn't less have been rooting for them to get together as a couple. I was like, there's nothing here. You've laid no groundwork. You've established no romantic beats or connection between these two people. Like, it was just, like, horrible. And then this didn't bother me because I found their story incredibly boring, but a lot of other reviewers complained whenever they had any sort of moment of connection, you cut back to the mother story and, like, totally interrupted the flow of the film. So a lot of people really hated the pacing. I only liked the mother story, so I was always kind of glad to, like, get away from their shenanigans.
I did at points be like, is this love story believable? Like, how quickly they're falling in love? I did have those thoughts, but I thought it, like, evened out for me, and they did a job of showing that these were people who wanted to love, but had barriers in both their experiences and the personalities that were preventing it. So it made sense that they would kind of move quickly because they wanted to, but the movie was about them overcoming the barriers that were keeping them from doing so. And so it made a little bit more sense to me, even though I did have those thoughts at points where, is this a little too hokey and moving a little too quickly? But I thought it made sense within the story.
I mean,
and
his barrier was like, what? Other than being just a terrible person kind of overall, which he doesn't really graduate out of to earn her.
Well, his running from commitment and not telling women how he felt, that's something that he had to overcome at the end, when they were in London. So
you keep saying that he runs from commitment. What is our knowledge of him running from commitment?
Well, his brother always made the point that he would rush into things and then
get bored. That's not a running from commitment problem. That's a rushing into things and getting bored problem.
I don't know. I think it was a little bit of commitment. I mean, before things get serious, if you ditch, that's a form of running from commitment. Not to the level that Issa Rae had in the movie, but... No,
I mean, again, before things get serious, things are pretty serious with him and his last girlfriend. Like, I don't know. I mean, I find it's like, it's just the infatuation, you get caught up in the infatuation and then there's nothing really there. Like, it's not your fear of commitment, it's your realizing, like, oh, this person isn't as great as I thought I was, and I'm not actually in love as I thought I was. Is very different than a fear of commitment, which they say about him. But I just thought their love story was so unenchanting. Like, the number one thing you have to do as a romantic movie is, like, sell me on the couple. Like, have me root, this is like, have me have every fiber of my being, like, root for them to get together. Like, they're so perfect together. This doesn't rate as highly as Silver Linings Playbook in couples that I was, like, actively rooting against. Because there was nothing like that offensive about either of them, although I thought he was a douche, and I thought any girl with a self-esteem would have walked away from him
I disagree with that vehemently. I've seen way worse than him, like, half girls fawning all over them. Like, it's not surprising at all to see a terrible man have...
any girl with self...
I mean... there's different ways.
There's lots of girls without self-esteem who, like, guys treat them like dirt. I'm friends with some of them. Like, it happens. I wouldn't say that it does.
I mean, I don't know. Self-esteem manifests itself in, I would say that, there are some women who I think have healthy self-esteem.
And still would pursue the type of person who would stand up his best, like, fail to give the best man speech at his own brother's wedding and then not even feel sorry about it later?
Yes. I know some.
You do, but okay.
But I think it's interesting, if I could add this, it's interesting that you said you didn't felt like you couldn't root for the couple, and that's why you didn't like it. I think if it was that type of story, our feelings on this would be flipped, because I like love stories that
where the two people totally shouldn't get together.
Or I like love stories that examine the realities of love and some of the causalities, things that just examine the nature of love rather than like a love story. Two people fall in love and there's some downs, there's some ups, and they get together. That's boring to me. And I felt that the photograph really did explore the generational trauma behind love and how the relationships that we see, particularly our parents, embark on, has an effect on what we choose later on in life, whether that's consciously or subconsciously. And so since it delved into that, I think I liked it more. If it was just a straightforward love story about two people getting together, we'd probably be flipped. You'd like it, and I wouldn't like it at all.
Okay, so let's talk about the generational quote-unquote trauma that we hear a lot about. Name one instance in the movie where Christina Eames, the mother, looks like a neglectful parent.
I wouldn't say depending on how you view it, you could say the fact that she never told her daughter who her real father was is neglectful. But other than that, I'm sure if I would characterize anything she did as neglectful per se.
Yeah, that's the problem. So you keep hearing from Issa Rae what a terrible mother is. You keep hearing from the mother saying, I regret what a bad mother I was. The one scene you actually see of them together, she's holding her daughter or she's holding her daughter's hand. Mm-hmm. Or her daughter is laughing off camera and you see her smile. So I'm like, there is a totally bizarre disconnect between what you were told about this woman and what they actually film. You're told that she's so good at leaving people. They imply she's left Courtney B. Vance, like the father of Issa Rae that we think. Mm-hmm. When you flip back to her moments in the past, she's with a guy who's badgering her to marry him. She's been very clear that she doesn't want that and she wants other things out of life. So she goes. And I'm like, this isn't a woman who has commitment issues. And then she comes back and she's devastated that he's already moved on. And she's like, gosh, I thought he would wait for me or come with me. Like, he's the one with like relationship problems.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, the fact that
he was so afraid to be alone, he waited 2 months before he found somebody else.
I mean, but to say that that's not a display of commitment issues. I mean, I think it is that you would leave someone, tell them, this is over, I have other dreams and aspirations, I'm going to leave the city, and they're not expecting you to come back. But then when you come back, you're like sort of devastated that they've moved on. I mean, that's stringing someone along like that is a form of commitment.
She never strung him along.
I mean,
he kept badgering her to marry him, and she kept saying, no, I don't want this.
Yes, but to be upset.
Stop asking.
Yeah, but to be upset when he accepts your answer and then moves on, that's a form of like stringing someone along. Like, if you don't want me,
that's not a form of stringing something along. You have to be with the person to be stringing them along. I
mean, but to impart that feeling upon them that they've, in a way, wronged you because they accepted your denial, I mean, that's playing with people's emotions in a way that, like...
Okay, again, there's no playing of anybody's emotions because she doesn't talk to him about it. And she doesn't try to manipulate or guilt him, A. B, I didn't read it as... It's
indecisiveness, at least, which is...
Is it?
Yeah. I mean,
Why?
if you're going to cut somebody off, I mean, then cut them off. Don't care about what they do at all. Like, if you make the decision to dump someone, like, then they're free. It shouldn't matter what they do. It shouldn't affect you at one way or another if he's moved on. You dumped him.
Wow, that's harsh. And I'm like a dump him in scorched earth behind me person, and even I'm like...
That's not harsh. Like, if
you have to, like, mourn and get over the relationship, like... If you truly cared about somebody, your heart isn't just like flip a switch. Well, they're gone. I'm on to the next person.
If they dumped you,
that's not how feelings work.
They have no right to get upset with how you move on.
I never said they had. It's not about rights. You keep making it out like she did something to him with these feelings or whatever, which she did not do.
Oh, no. But I'm saying, like, you're saying it like there's something wrong with him. Due to the speed with which he moved on. He got dumped. He can go do whatever he wants to. He could get married the next day if he wanted to.
But it sort of it looks super desperate. is all I will say. That if you truly cared about somebody that you wanted to marry, that you could just be over them in a hot second and on to the next person speaks to a lack of character.
A lack of character?
Yes. How deep are your emotions that you can just turn them off in a second? Like, that's how your breakups work? Like, good Lord.
No, not personally, but I don't think you can judge someone for
how they
move on after they've been dumped. Like, if I'm dating Susie and then I'm like, hey, Susie, this isn't working out. Like, I'm not feeling this. I'm gone. And then I have no right to say anything about the next person she dates and when she dates them.
But okay. So it depends on the breakup. So if you're like, I was with Susie. Susie was a raging alcoholic and used to hit me whenever she came home drunk. And then Susie dumps me. I'm like, go get yourself another girl and find a healthy relationship. Is like, I totally get that. But when you sincerely love somebody and you enough to want to marry them and spend the rest of your life together and you break up because of circumstance or timing, it's a lot harder for me to say like, oh, I get it. Like you should, I can see why you suddenly have zero feelings for this person anymore and you're ready to date somebody else. That just seems like a lot of love and emotion that you managed to disappear overnight.
From a third person perspective, if that's like how you felt about Susie and person A's relationship, yes. But if you were dating Susie, I don't think you can't continue to dictate someone's dating life after you've excised them.
No, you can, and I'm not advocating that you can, but I am saying like if I were dating somebody for a while and it was really serious, and I was like, for example, completely randomly chosen, I have to go to grad school, like, I'm going to go pursue my career, and I'm going to move away. And they were like, well, I want to stay in my small town, and like, I don't want that life. I mean, it would be heartbreaking to break up. I'd still do it because I had to pursue my own dreams, just like she does in the movie, which she is judged and penalized for, and we'll get into that in a second. But I'm still like sad about the breakup, and I would hope they would be too. Like in the sort of like life is unfair that I can't be with this person. I'm not gonna be like, and if they started dating somebody right away, I wouldn't turn around and be like, how dare you? But I would be like, ooh, maybe their feelings weren't as deep as I thought they were. If they can just start over with somebody else so quickly. Well,
I will say that just because someone moves on to someone else after they've broken up with someone, that doesn't mean that the feelings were never real or that the feelings aren't still there.
I think the feelings are, that's my point. I think the feelings are still there, and you just like found a backup, and it's like, oh.
Yeah.
That doesn't speak well to you. That speaks to your desperation and loneliness.
They say the best way to get over someone is to get under someone else.
Yes.
So it could be that. But, I mean,
we're
making the circumstances out to be like she had no choice but to move.
She had no choice but to move.
That was more of a desire thing, and it was more on her end than his. And so my point was still stand, like, if you're gonna dump me, like, you can't be salty on who's are if you dump me.
So let's just cover the fact that she has dreams and ambitions and decides to move to New York to pursue them. Mm-hmm. And she is painted as a horrible, cold-hearted woman who can't love her daughter or anybody else. He has dreams and ambitions and moves to London, and that's cool. Which just sort of left me with this. So it's okay when a man does it, but when a woman does it, we suddenly all the judgment in the world is getting rained down upon her. And I found that incredibly problematic.
So was he given a pass? I mean, because he was chastised by his brother once more, like, oh, okay, you're doing it again. You got into this whole relationship with her, and now you're jetting off to London. You're doing it again. They had that conversation at the bar, and then also she cursed in New Orleans. So did he skate?
In the movie's eyes? Absolutely.
I wouldn't say. I think the point was
Is he painted as a cold, unloving person who's going to then go on and neglect his child? No, he's not.
So I did want to ask that. They didn't show anything on screen that explicitly showed that she was a bad mother.
It's brought up constantly.
It is brought up. So do they need to show that?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it just looked weird.
Okay.
Like, they really did. They just filmed it at cross purposes. It looked like lousy storytelling, frankly. Plus, there was an element, the other thing too, which is funny, guys, I don't write these things myself. I read the Wikipedia description where they describe her as a famous photographer. You literally never hear that in the entire movie.
So did that come from the studio, or was it just Wikipedia?
It was Wiki. I don't know. And I'm just sitting there like, what?
Because anybody can edit
freaking
Wikipedia.
Throwaway line, because it's actually not clear at all.
Yeah.
What happened to her?
I would say she's successful. It never made the case she was famous. But I don't know if that's an official line from the studio.
It was so frustrating. Like, she's like, well, she devoted herself to her work. And I'm like, and toiled away in obscurity. Like, they literally never addressed it in the movie. And there is a moment where he says to another coworker, like, look up Christina Eames. And I was like, all I needed was the coworker to come back and be like, yeah, she was like huge in the like early 90s, you know, and then we would have been fine. But they literally never tell you. And I was like, and that's where it's like, how many men, how many Jackson Pollocks, how many Pablo Picassos are there that get a free pass on their personal life for the genius of the work? Where this whole movie just like ran her down, which I am not saying it's okay for the men. I'm really not. But like her having ambitions this movie just took a very dim view of that. And it was really troublesome to me.
I think it took a dim view of it in terms of how it affected her ability to love. They did mention the neglect of a daughter, which we've gone through. I just took it to more as an examination of her ability to connect and love. I didn't it really never felt like the tenor of the film was that this odious person. I never got that feeling. Like, it never felt like Issa Rae hated her mother or anything, or like even that they had a bad
yes, it did.
It did?
Her mom just died. You never even see her shed a single freaking tear.
Not fair. I mean,
no. I mean, and she was like, too bad. I mean, like the closing line of the movie was like, too bad she wasn't a better mother. Like, or the closing line of her conversation with. No, it's very clear.
I mean, and that was
she had a very bad and distant relationship with her mother. That's established throughout the film.
So a lot of the things about her saying she was a bad mother came from Christina herself. How many times did Issa say that directly in the movie?
Every conversation she had with Courtney Vance. And when she talks to Lakeith Stanfield about it. Then the big twist of the movie in terms of like, you know, she's so worried that she's really her mother and she's full of like loving somebody. And then she finds out actually she's her father, and what she needs to do is like give up her life to follow somebody else. How did we feel about that message? Or
I thought it was a good message. She figured out the issues that were holding her back from having healthy, long-lasting relationships.
Which were what, again? Because we're told a lot about him. We're not really told anything about her issues.
Well, that's what I thought was so well done, that her mother's issues were her issues. And the way that she saw her mother love men is how she ended up loving men. Even if it was subconscious, she didn't realize that she was doing it. And it really got to that, you know, one of those idioms.
Again, where are you pulling that from?
From her mother's own conversations. One of the first things that she said.
Yeah, no, from her.
Oh, from her?
How do we know that it's affected her romantic history? Where in the movie do we see that?
That was said during, they talked about that at the art thing, the movie showing. The movie showing, I remember that being a conversation between her and her friend that later hooked up with Kelvin Harrison's character. When they talked about whenever her romantic history came up, she talked about, you know, how, and she had that conversation as well in the museum with Lakeith Stanfield when they first got together, which kind of struck me as weird because they hopped right into relationship talk. But she talked about that, like how she had been in some relationships and they flamed out quickly, and that really paralleled what we heard her mother say, and then what we later saw throughout the film that her mother had in a relationship with Isaac.
Yeah, who she was with a long time and then eventually left to pursue her own career ambitions. Mm-hmm. This is totally a flame out quickly storyline. Like, this movie just doesn't make any sense. Like, and that's my problem. Like, Issa Rae says that, but you're not given a bunch of examples or really you don't see her do that with him. And in fact, like I said, the opposite, like she should have flamed out on him right quick when she heard the story about, and like him being a terrible brother, like, and then when he didn't call her back, and then, you know, like there were a million reasons for her to walk away at any given moment, which she does not take. So then it's really hard to believe that she's like.
So for the conversation we're having, it sounds like you're more of a show don't tell person when it comes to films. Like you want to actually see it.
Well,
I
yes.
don't want it to
I mean,
be
that is, I think we can all agree that's quality filmmaking. The movie just didn't know how to tell this story, and it fell into a whole bunch of really like unconscious misogynistic traps that I was just.
What else did you think was misogynistic other than
his whole being was misogynistic. Again, like he moves the relationship really fast, which is weird and should have been a red flag, but it's not. His weird. Failing to call, then he moves it really fast and then doesn't call her, like starts ignoring her phone calls, like. It just, and then the portrayal of, again, the opposition between, or the differential treatment between him wanting to move to London for a job when he had a job doing what he wanted to do in New York versus the mom wanting to move to New York to become a photographer where she could not have been a photographer in the town that she was in.
You're kind of making it seem like him working for the AP in London was a lateral move from where he was before. That was a step up. Like
it was a step up.
You're making like, oh, he left one job for another job. No, he clearly went up the ladder in his profession.
Yeah,
like that's
she
not a very
found a ladder. Those are not comparable situations. Yes, would it have compromised his career to stay? Absolutely. But again, yeah, but that's the problem. It's not like she was a good photographer and everybody was like, moved to New York and be in the art scene. And she could have sort of compromised her career a little bit and had the man. It was like all or nothing for her. It wasn't all or nothing for him.
Yeah, it's not apples to apples. They're not as disparate, I think.
But sure does round down her for making that choice in a way that they do not do to him. So like I said, there's just a lot of, to me, I just was like, I couldn't believe this was written by a woman. And then how plastic and made up she was all of the time was really frustrating. Especially with an actress like Issa Rae, who we've seen with natural hair a lot. Like, just putting her in this, like, you know, high gloss finish all the time was a lot. I was like, I don't like anybody to be that made up. But, you know, for an actress who, like, that's not her brand anyway, there was no call for it.
I think they were going for that elegant look and trying to reinvigorate black romance genre. So I think they wanted to go for that stylistic look and have everything high end to try to make that. I think that was a choice. It may not.
Obviously it was. I just didn't think it worked. Like, I just didn't think most things about this movie worked at all. All right. So, like, wrapping it up, social impact score from 1 to 10.
We're going to have to see how this resonates over time. I could see it being a classic in like the black love film lore, up there with like Love Jones, which has become a cult classic and it's borrowed heavily from.
Yeah, and I've never actually seen Love Jones, so I missed all those references.
And like Love and Basketball, Brown Sugar, all those. I could see it entering that pantheon. It's just going to take time. So I will give it a 6 for. I'm surprised I liked it. I usually like bleaker love work out well in the end. This one surprised me. I like it.
Okay. I'll just give it a 2 because, you know, female director and some black people in it, like his movie. All right. So both of us have multiple recommendations for this week. So I will go first since you have so many. I have 2. And I recognize this is like the romantic comedy, not the romantic drama genre. But if you want to go back and see like a great romantic comedy that deals with class issues, I would recommend Jumping the Broom. It's one of my favorites. And then following that up, if you want to know what rich black people are like, read anything by Dorothy West, because she grew up as a rich black person and she kind of tackles that in a lot of her fiction work. And then particularly, I recommend, and there is a movie of this with Halle Berry, her book called The Wedding.
So my recommendations, about a few weeks ago, there was a tweet on Twitter that asked people if you could curate a mini film festival list based on any subgenre or director, what would you choose?
Cool.
And fittingly for this podcast, at the time, I tweeted that I would pick Film on Love. And so my recommendations are 9 of my favorite love stories. As I said, I like love stories that are challenging and show the pitfalls of love and the different directions that they could go. So my mini film festival curation was Casablanca, Brief Encounter, Cold War, If Beale Street Could Talk, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Unfaithful, Blue is the Warmest Color, La La Land, and Her. So that encompasses love from the 50s, got some black and whites, you have some tragic love stories, impossible love stories, LGBTQ representation, and the future of love with Her, because that's the direction we're headed.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. As always, you can reach out to us at moviesmatterpod@gmail.com is our email address, our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com, at movies our Twitter handle. If you want to talk to Garrett,
you can catch me on cinemababble.com. Zavi's blog, us.zavi.com, and also on Twitter, the Cinema Babble, or Facebook, Cinema Babble.
And as always, remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.